In our crazy, fast-paced, hyper-digital world, it's actually incredibly easy to lose touch with the very things that make us human. So today, we're going to slow things down a bit. We're going to focus on some truly timeless principles for navigating modern relationships, earning trust, and ultimately becoming the kind of person others naturally want to be around.
Think about a recent interaction you had. Maybe it was with a coworker, a client, or hey, even a family member. Have you ever noticed how some conversations just effortlessly build trust while others instantly put up these invisible walls? You either walk away feeling deeply connected or totally, utterly misunderstood. It's a super relatable, everyday problem. I mean, we're more digitally connected than ever before, right? Yet so many of us feel isolated, and honestly, workplace friction is kind of at an all-time high. So why does this happen? Well, it almost always comes down to how we approach the person sitting right across from us.
To understand how to actually break down those walls, we're looking at a legendary manual today. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was originally published way back in 1936. Now I hear you might be thinking, really, advice from the 1930s for today's digital world? But get this, billionaire investor Warren Buffett actually took a 14-week Carnegie course when he was just 20 years old. And to this very day, he proudly displays that diploma on his office wall. Not his college degrees, but that diploma. He literally credits these principles for his success. So we're going to dust off these timeless truths, back them up with some modern science, and show you how to apply them to your daily life.
Lesson 1. The Art of Connection.
Look, if you want to positively influence anyone, you first have to genuinely connect with them. Dale Carnegie actually loved to quote Henry Ford on this, who said, "If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own." And honestly, this is exactly where workplace friction usually starts. We're just so busy thinking about our own deadlines and our own stress that we end up treating the other person like an obstacle rather than a human being.
And what's fascinating is how modern research beautifully updates this classic advice. A recent Science Daily study analyzed 25 different experiments and completely debunked the idea that you can simply guess what someone else is thinking just by looking at their facial expressions or posture. We do this all the time, right? We assume we know exactly what our colleague is going through, but the science says assuming thoughts just leads to errors. True insight doesn't come from guessing, it comes from active listening.
And here's the psychology behind why active listening works so incredibly well. The famous philosophers and psychologists John Dewey and Sigmund Freud, they both identified this fundamental human longing. They called it the desire to be important, or the desire to be great. Carnegie himself noted that this craving is almost as deep and insistent as the desire for food and water. When you actually stop, look someone in the eye, and actively listen to their perspective, you're literally feeding their deepest emotional urge for significance and genuine appreciation. You make them feel important. So let's turn this into a quick action plan. In your very next conversation, whether it's a tense meeting at work or just a chat with a friend, I want you to try this. Step 1, stop guessing what they're feeling. Step 2, ask them questions about their perspective. And Step 3, listen completely without interrupting. Just a few minutes of genuine interest will build a bridge way faster than any persuasive argument ever could.
Lesson 2. Navigating disagreements respectfully.
Now, no matter how well you listen, disagreements are just a fact of life. They're inevitable. But how you handle that friction, that changes everything. Carnegie had this very famous, very blunt rule. He said, you can't win an argument. Think about it. If you lose, well, you lose. But if you win, you still lose. Why? Because you've stripped away the other person's dignity. When you tell someone straight out that they're wrong, their natural, knee-jerk reaction is to dig their heels in and to defend their ego.
So what's the alternative? Carnegie's timeless principle here is a real game changer. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Just think about the power of that for a second. When someone comes at you totally ready for a fight, and you just confidently say, "You know what? You're absolutely right. I made a mistake here." Bam! It instantly diffuses the conflict. You literally take the wind right out of their sails. It shows immense integrity and emotional maturity.
And this brilliantly illustrates what modern academic research calls confidence heuristics. Basically, a study published on Archive explored how social influence evolves, and it turns out expressing yourself confidently signals that you have better information, which naturally generates influence over others. Paradoxically, confidently owning up to a fault doesn't make you look weak at all. It makes you look incredibly secure and trustworthy. People are naturally drawn to leaders who are confident enough to admit their own blind spots.
All right, so here is your practical takeaway for navigating conflict. When someone challenges you, do this. First, welcome the disagreement. It might actually save you from making a bigger mistake down the road. Second, control your temper.
Your first instinctive reaction is almost always defensive, so just take a breath. And third, look for areas where you can honestly admit an error and say so out loud. You'll disarm your opponents and build bridges of understanding instead of higher walls.
Lesson 3. Inspiring others to act. Okay, so we've talked about connection and conflict, but how do we actually motivate others to act without just bossing them around? To explain this, Carnegie shared this highly relatable story about a young employee at the Carrier Corporation. So this guy wanted his colleagues to play basketball with him after work. He stood up and basically said, "I want you to come play. I like playing, but last time I got a black eye because we didn't have enough guys. I want you to come down tomorrow." And what happened? Crickets. Nobody cared. He failed to persuade them because he completely, 100% ignored their interests. The crucial point here is summed up perfectly by this quote from Harry A. Overstreet. First, arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. Human action springs from what we fundamentally desire. If the basketball guy had just said, "Hey, do you guys want a great way to blow off some steam, get some exercise, and have a ton of fun after a stressful day?" he would have had a full court. You absolutely must align your request with what the other person actually wants.
This ties directly into Carnegie's teachings on public speaking, too. When you speak to others, whether it's an audience of 1 or 1,000, true influence isn't about pulling out a bag of manipulative psychological tricks. It's about genuine enthusiasm. When you authentically care about the other person's interests and you speak with confidence about how your idea helps them, it becomes completely infectious. People naturally want to follow that kind of energy.
So here's your practical takeaway for empowering and inspiring others. First, before you ask for anything, just pause and frame it in terms of their interests. Always ask yourself, what is in it for them? Second, give them a fine reputation to live up to. For example, if you tell a colleague, "Hey, I'm coming to you because you have the absolute best eye for detail in the entire office," I guarantee they will bend over backwards to prove you right. Positive expectations create this amazing, virtuous cycle of trust and high performance.
The mentor's final thought.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to remember that these principles, active listening, admitting when you're wrong, and talking in terms of other people's interests, they aren't just corporate tactics. They represent a fundamental shift in how you view the people around you. So, I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative question. Will you choose to deal with others merely as creatures of logic, or will you connect with them as creatures of emotion? Because the absolute truth is, we are all emotional beings, longing to be appreciated. When you connect with the emotion first, the walls come down and true influence begins. Thank you so much for joining me today.